Hello,
Oh,
Sarita.
hello. We're going to start in like 30 seconds. Can you all see me clearly?
Yes, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. It would be wonderful if whoever's joining into the session to mute themselves, and then I'll give an opportunity for all of us to unmute ourselves towards the end. All right, we're going to start in about 20 seconds. Okay, hello everyone. We've got 28 participants in here. This is amazing. So exciting. I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen and introduce myself and what we're going to talk about today. And just so you know, this session is being recorded currently. If you have any questions or comments, or you want to make a point or anything, feel free to use the chat feature at the bottom. Currently, I have everyone muted because it was a lot of background noise, but later on, you're going to have the opportunity to be unmuted and ask questions as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar on Zoom about Zoom. This is a first of series of what we're calling Spark sessions, and this is hosted through Knowing Technologies. So for those of you that do not know what Knowing Technologies is, we are a company based in the Bay Area, but we work with educators all around, and we offer two services. One is managed services, and there's another part of it, which is an instructional innovation team. My name is Iman. I am a educator, as well as all the people that you see here on the screen. We're all educators and instructional innovation coaches. So what we do is that we work with teachers on meaningfully integrating technology in their classrooms via a series of really small one-on-one, sustained professional development throughout the year. Naturally, with COVID-19, our jobs have ramped up like crazy because everyone is now doing distance learning. And so we thought it would be a really wonderful opportunity to offer our expertise and give little small chunks of information for you to digest, because everyone's really going through the same thing right now. So if you can see here, these are our Spark sessions that we're offering this week. These Spark sessions are offered also on Twitter. So if you follow our Twitter page, which is right here, it's called Knowing Technologies, or Knowing Tech 12. We post a lot of different resources, and we post weekly the Spark sessions that we are going to be covering. So for today, I'm going to be talking about synchronous learning with Zoom, because that seems to be a really, really hot topic that everyone is talking about. And later on in the afternoon, we'll be talking about Flipgrid. Later on in the week, you'll see specific tools. Doesn't matter if you're a K through 12 educator, all of these tools can be applied to your different grades. We'll talk about screen recording, collaborating with Jamboard, different ways of screencasting, digital reading resources, and this will be updated as time goes on throughout the weeks. This presentation that you see right here, I'm going to go ahead and share it inside your chat window so that you can have that as well. So you'll be able to access it. And keep in mind that because it's a work in progress, we are uploading things every day. The resources are going to be available day to day. So for example, if you take a look at Monday, these are our two sessions. I have a little bit of information about each, but then Tuesday is not quite baked yet. But as you visit it every day, you'll notice that it's uploaded. And in addition, all of these sessions are recorded. So if you want to look at something again, or you want to share this with your colleague or co-teacher, feel free to do so as well. Okay, so today we're going to focus on small chunks of half-hour information. Like I said, use a chat if you have any questions or comments. That would be super helpful. And also just remember that you got this. Me and my team have been working with so many different teachers, and everyone's kind of in a different stage of their journey. Some people are still flying by the seat of their pants, which is fine. Some people are a little bit more stable, and some people are really thinking of taking it to the next level with their students. No matter where you are, you got this. And most importantly, if you feel like you benefited from this session and you benefited from this collaborative opportunity, you can totally reach out to us at info@knowingtechnologies.com, and we can work with you on offering a bit of a more customized coaching solution. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, Zoom. Here's the agenda for today. I don't know if I'm going to be on time, but I'm going to try my best. I'm going to start by first introducing you to Zoom, although probably a lot of people have heard about it. Everybody be offering Zoom classes, workout classes, group classes, teacher-student classes, parent classes, whatever. I'm going to introduce you to Zoom. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to set up your account as an educator. So we're looking at the perspective of your classroom space. And with that, how to set up your basic and advanced settings so that you can provide structure for your students and a little bit of autonomy as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different modes of screen sharing that you can do with your students. And finally, little tidbits about hosting a meeting. As you can see in the presentation here, I'm giving a lot of resources for each of these. So you are going to be able to have access to click on them and to see them and to be able to bookmark them for yourselves. I will talk a little bit about how to actually take these settings and turn it into a meaningful classroom experience. So tips and tricks for your students to be able to have community rules, as well as how to run your different classes, whether you're teaching kindergarten, elementary, middle, high, whatever subject it is. And finally, at the end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to practice and to ask any questions if you have. So before I get started, I'm just going to pause for a minute and see if anybody has any questions. I'm also trying to find the chat bubble because I can't find it anymore. Where did it go? Hold on, I'll stop my share for a minute and see if anybody has any questions. I will check the chat. Does anyone have any for me? Nope. Okay. So I'll first start by sharing the presentation so that you can actually have it and then you can follow along with me. Okay. Here we go. This is a presentation and you can bookmark it so that you can keep it throughout the days. Okay. I am going to go back to go ahead and sharing my screen and talk to you a little bit about Zoom. All right. So Zoom is one of several video conferencing solutions. A lot of schools are using different things. For example, Google Meet, GoToMeeting. Some people are using their own internal resources, whether it's via Schoology or whether it's inside their Canvas. But Zoom seems to be the hot topic. I have linked in here something that I recommend for you to bookmark. It's this thing called Step Guide to Zoom. And it's this beautiful living document that is updated day to day. It's the NSCDS Step Guide to Zoom. It breaks it down on how to get started with Zoom, some tutorials for yourself, how to use it for online learning, and then at the very end, there's best practices. So that's all I'm really going to say about this, but I do recommend you to bookmark it because people are actually editing it as we speak, and they're adding a lot of resources specifically for your K-12 environment. So make sure that you have this bookmarked. I saw this first last week and it's like tripled in the content. So it's amazing. Keep this with you. You'll also know that Zoom itself has a lot of tutorials and help guides in there. Some of them are really helpful for you as an educator. Some are more like for business meetings or for personal meetings. So it's good to have them all. That's the first thing that I want to share with you. The second is talking about setting up your account. So depending on what kind of devices you and your students have, Zoom is going to look a little bit different. Zoom can be accessed on your computer, whether it's a Mac, whether it's a Samsung, whether it's a Dell, whether it's a Chromebook, it doesn't matter. You can download Zoom on any of those. You can download it on an iPad or a tablet, and you can also download it on a phone. If you are a host or someone that is setting up the meeting, all the buttons look the same, excuse me, all the buttons are there. They just look a little bit different depending on the device that you have. So I recommend, if it's your first time starting to host a meeting or using Zoom, to make sure that you are familiar with how it looks on each of your devices. I made sure to download it on my phones, on my iPad, and on my computer so that I could be versatile and comfortable with all the mediums. In addition to that, when you send your link or your meeting room to your students, the experience for them looks a little bit different as well, depending on what kind of tool they have. Now, I know this may be like an equity thing, but I have the privilege of having more than one device, and that helps me toggle between different things. I'm going to show you how you can use that as an educator if you do have more than one device. If not, we can do a lot of low-tech options as well in order to promote collaboration. So make sure you have that on all of your devices. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to show you is how to actually host a meeting. Now, when you host a meeting, there are different settings that you can set up, which depends on, or which shows your students how they can interact with you. So if you want to follow along with me with this would be great. When you're setting up or hosting your meeting, you would want to start by going to zoom.us, US. That's really where you can start your account. And when you go into zoom.us, let me just move our faces to the side here. That's another thing with Zoom. If you have your faces everywhere, you can move them. Also, another annoying thing is that sometimes the faces are on the right, sometimes they're on the left, and then you lose your windows. So that might be a little bit of a frustrating point, but you'll get used to it over time. In any case, when you get onto zoom.us, go ahead and go into your account. So if you haven't signed in before, you're going to see a button that says sign in, but you go ahead and straight go to your account. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Zoom, the free version, used to offer 40 minutes. But since COVID-19 has happened, you can see here that says Zoom has removed the 40-minute time limit, which is wonderful. You're going to go to the left and you're going to click on meetings. So you can see here that I have all of my meetings set up for the week. One recommendation for you as an educator is that if you have a recurring class, it's good to set up one meeting that's recurring. So for example, if you teach science Monday, Wednesday, Friday, depending on your school's interpretation of how you're going to do synchronous or asynchronous learning, you would click on schedule a new meeting and you would name it. So science class with Miss Hagag, whatever it is, KG class with whatever, you enter the description. I would set the time of it, and I would have this to be a recurring meeting. The reason why that's very powerful is when it's a recurring meeting, it stays as the same exact ID, and you can stick that anywhere. You can email it to your students, you can send it to parents, you can put it on your school's learning management system or LMS. And the nice thing about it as well is that the students cannot access the room if the time is closed. So if you set the meeting for 1 hour, for example, if you're the host, you can go past one meeting, but once that room is closed, it's closed until the next day, and then the students can come in. I would also recommend you to not require a meeting password. It can get really complicated for kids, especially the littles, to have to put in or have their parent or guardian help them put in a password. You have certain admin rights that you can choose. So maybe as the host, you want to start with your video off, or you want to start it on. You want to start with your participants or your students off or on. It depends on what you want. Some schools I know, for example, in high school, make the participant video default on because they want to make sure their kids are like not in bed. Like they want to make sure that they're there. But with middle school, for example, it's a little bit different. You got kids that are super shy. So you get to choose. So I recommend when you host the meeting to go through these settings and make sure that you have them saved, if that makes any sense, okay? There are options like enabling a waiting room. Some educators like to use that. For example, imagine when you're in your classroom and you have your kids waiting outside before they come in, as opposed to them just tumbling in at once. You get what I'm saying? So you can set up a waiting room as well. And you can also mute the participants upon entry. One nice thing about muting your students upon entry is that they actually cannot unmute themselves. If you ask everyone to mute themselves, they will unmute themselves. I've seen that happen with a kindergarten class where everyone's like, "Wah!" and they're all talking about what they did for the day. So it's your choice, but think about these options when you're hosting a meeting. I'm going to pause for a second here because I have 3 chats and I want to see what people are saying. What about Zoom bombing? Without a password, if the Zoom link or meeting ID is shared, then anyone can join. That's actually a really good point. With Zoom bombing, I've seen that happen before. That goes a little bit into the culture of your learning space that you're going to set, and I'm going to circle back to that in a minute. Just like we have our own classroom management tools and we have our own ways of managing our spaces, there's a huge community piece to this online sphere that we are just starting to uncover. So I'm gonna address that in a moment. How do you get folks to call in from their phone rather than their computer? Also a very good question. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. I've heard that there's Zoom bombers. We talked about that, Zoom bombing. Okay, so that's a really hot topic. We're gonna get to that in a minute. When it comes to having people call in from their phone, I understand, again, that's an equity issue. Some people cannot join in from their computer. Not sure if you can see this, but when you download Zoom on your computer or on your tablet, you should be able to see something that looks like, where is it? I'm having a hard time seeing my stuff. One second. I'm gonna stop share for a minute and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here it is. Ah, there it is. Okay, I'm gonna go back and share my screen with you so that you can see what I mean. You can give me a thumbs up if you can see this little black box that says Zoom Spark Session. Just give me a thumbs up so I can see. If you can actually see it. Nope. Okay. I've noticed that this shows sometimes and it doesn't show sometimes, but when you download Zoom, there's a box that pops up and it tells you what your sessions are. You can choose to invite people to your session. And when you invite the people, it's also a button at the bottom. It says copy URL. When you copy that invitation, it shows you the URL, it shows you the meeting code, and it shows you how you can join from the phone. To give you an idea of what that looks like, this is my incognito mode. Yeah, what I would say is click at the bottom where it says invite when you're a host, and you'll be able to see that there's so many different ways of sharing it with your students. I'll take a screenshot for it and I'll post it towards the end, okay? All right, where were we? So we talked about setting up a meeting. Now there's one part here that I would recommend you to look into also, and that's on the left if you go under your settings. This is really, really important. A lot of educators have been asking me about really helpful collaborative features like breakout rooms, annotating, and whatnot. And these are all available in your regular and advanced settings. So again, we talked about your hosting video, your participants video, audio type. You can see that when you select telephone and computer audio, that will generate that for you, and I'll take a screenshot for you. I'm going to scroll down here and talk about the advanced features. So I allow my participants to share their screen, but I only allow myself as a host to take over. So I don't allow the students to take over. That just creates insanity. I also have my annotation tool turned on. So think if you're doing one-on-one sessions with your students, especially with reading specialists, they need to be able to annotate with their students, and you can use the whiteboard feature as well. I also have, this for myself is turned off, but you can provide nonverbal feedback. Make sure you have breakout room turned on if that's what you want, as well as closed captioning. Closed captioning is super, super, super helpful for students with learning differences, and it provides that extra level of accessibility for students to be able to access what you're saying. You can also save the captions as well. For me, I like to have virtual background on, but you might want to have it turned off for your students if they're going to go crazy with it. It's the opportunity to provide a green screen in the back and put different pictures. And so I would recommend you to go through this attention tracking to see who's actually like idle or if they have another page open. I would recommend you to take a look through this. Okay. All right. I got a couple more questions and then I'm going to move on to the next part. Let's see here. 4 chats. Here we go. Oh, thank you so much, Jim. Jim provided some extra information about joining a meeting by phone. If I click on it right here, there it is. Zoom has a really awesome help center, by the way. So take a look at this in the chat to be able to have an internet or a dial-in number as well. You can also have co-hosts. I'll show that in a minute. Somebody asked about that and someone responded. Thank you, Jim. Okay. All right, let's talk about what it looks like in your classroom, because I think that that's the most important part. If you go back to the presentation, let's go ahead and click on, got a lot of windows open. Boom, tips and tricks for managing your classroom. So I came across this wonderful, wonderful article put together by educators on how to use Zoom for your classrooms. So while it's loading over here, one of the things that I recommend in a class setting, it's been really, really, really helpful to utilize the first 5 minutes or the last 5 minutes of your class to allow the students to talk to each other. So like I said before, there's an academic piece, but there's also a huge community piece. Have the first 5 minutes of your class allowing the students to unmute themselves, to just talk to each other, to chat with each other, to get it out of their system, because they actually do really miss each other. And you can do the same thing at the end, whether it's wrap-up questions, whether it's exiting with something. Make sure that you incorporate some type of community piece in the beginning or the end. Like we said before, scheduling your classes is really helpful. And as an educator, it's important for you to join the class a little early, just so that you can make sure that you are set up and ready to go, all right? If it's your first time using Zoom with your students, it's important to set some ground rules. Every educator is different. Maybe your ground rule with students is, if you have a question, use the hand raising feature. If you have a question, put something in the chat. Some educators like to start their class with sharing the agenda while they share their screen. Some start with a warm-up question. Make sure that you have some sort of cadence and know that it's going to slightly differ from what you typically do in your class, because we're obviously all virtual online. You also want to talk a little bit about your discussion etiquette with your students. Some educators exclusively use breakout rooms. Some use all chat features in one, and some like to use the whiteboard, for example. What else was I thinking of? There was something else that was in my mind that I completely forgot. Yes, some educators like to use Zoom as a time to check in about the asynchronous work that they've been doing all week. So for example, an educator will share a video. They'll have the students answer questions, and then they'll do little pulses or check-ins to see how they're doing throughout the day, what questions they may have. Other educators, for example, use their Zoom sessions to build spirit. I know a kindergarten teacher, for example, she does daily 7 p.m. pajama check-ins just to see how her kids are doing. It looks different depending on the age level that you're working with. And like I said here before, there's awesome tools to build for engagement. You can check the attention tracking. You can poll your students, so we're going to practice that for a bit. Breakout rooms, virtual backgrounds, how to share a screen, whiteboarding, annotating, and how to do transcription for that as well. I recommend that you as well bookmark this and take a look into it to see if you can use it with your students. The last thing I want to be able to show all of you guys is the different options for screen sharing. This is my favorite feature of Zoom. I feel like the different ways that you can share your screen with your students is very powerful. In many ways, you're able to show more than you're able to show in a regular classroom, which is really cool. So I'm going to stop my typical screen sharing right now, and I'll show you the different options. You'll notice that on your Zoom dashboard that there's several buttons on the bottom. One is about your video, one is about your who are the participants, what it looks like to share your screen, chatting, closed captioning. As a host, your view is a little bit different. At the very bottom for everyone, they have a green button that says share screen. What's powerful about that is that you can share so many different things. You can share your entire desktop. This is very helpful for educators if you have a lot of applications open and you want to be able to toggle between them. So maybe you're pulling up a YouTube video and then you want to switch and show your Google slide deck. You want to switch and show a Google Doc. You want to switch and show what students have been doing on their Jamboard, for example. That's one really helpful feature. If you don't want to show all of that, you can just present the tab that you're on. So that gives you a little bit of privacy. What I've been using so far with you in my screen sharing is my whole desktop because I have so many things open. Another really incredible feature is the whiteboard. So if I go ahead and click on the whiteboard right here, you'll be able to see I've got this white space right here, and I, as an educator, yay, can draw, okay? It's a little awkward on the computer. If you have a tablet or an iPad, it's a little bit more useful one-to-one. The one downside of the whiteboard using on Zoom is that it is not two-way. So only I as an educator can use it to show you something, if that makes any sense. There are some hacks and workarounds if you want to be able to collaborate with your student. I've seen some educators, for example, have their Jamboard open, and tomorrow I'm going to be leading a session on Jamboard, but they'll have their Jamboard open and their students can collaborate with them on it as well. That's super, super helpful for kids that are doing one-on-one instruction. So I'm going to stop sharing the whiteboard. A really, really cool thing that you can do is you can share your iPad or your iPhone via either AirPlay, or you can share it via a cable. So I'm going to show you what it looks like on a cable. If I have my iPad right over here, I'm going to click on via cable, and you're going to notice that pretty soon, if it'll show up, boom, you can see my iPad. So some teachers will go ahead and pull up their notes or their email, and they'll start annotating with their students a certain piece of work. Again, I will be having a session on one of those hacks with Jamboard, which will be super helpful as well. I'm going to stop sharing that and go back to the sharing feature. Some teachers, this is another hack, don't have an iPad or don't feel comfortable annotating digitally. And so what they'll do is they'll have their camera on and they'll have a piece of butcher paper behind them and write. Other teachers, which I find pretty brilliant, like to actually write on paper. So what they'll do is they'll have their Zoom session on their computer and they'll log into Zoom on their phone as if they are a student. And they will literally prop their phone up, have a piece of paper, and start doing their lessons or their notes or whatever. It depends on where you are, whether you want to do it digitally, whether you want to do it on paper, whether you want to do it via an iPad, butcher paper, doesn't matter. If you want the collaborative feature though, you're going to have to do some sort of digital. Okay. Anything else that you can share? You can share your iPhone or iPad via AirPlay, so you could just unplug it. This only works for clearly an iPad or an iPhone, and you'd swipe from the top and then you AirPlay to the actual thing. So these are all different ways of sharing. There have been a lot of questions and I'm just like blazing through it. Oh, but Jim is answering. Jim is my colleague, by the way. He's a gangster right now and he's answering all of this. and I think that's where we are at. So let me go back and share the screen, see if there's anything else to go over, and then I will take some questions. So we talked about setting up your account, hosting a meeting, basic and advanced settings, tips and tricks for managing the classroom, and I didn't really give too much chance for practice, but there are 2 links right there. One is smart ways to use breakout rooms, and then my favorite right here is this last link. It's called video conferencing etiquette. I've seen a lot of educators share this with their students. It's really sweet. It breaks it down. You can take this if you'd like and use it with your kids. I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to give you an opportunity to watch this on your own time, but what I like about it is that you can use it to share it with your students, or you can use it to share with parents and guardians. There's a big communication piece to using Zoom and in general online learning, where for the student, they need the proper environment. And so I've seen a lot of kids, like they're sitting on their dining room table and they've got their setup going on, and other kids don't have that. Like they're in their beds or they're on their couches. So it might be helpful to take this video and to share it with parents or to share it with the students so that you all can be on the same page about what it looks like to run your synchronous classes. I'm going to stop my screen sharing. And that's about it. I know that there's a lot of questions here. If you have any other questions, please go ahead and message it to us. This recording is going to be saved and it's going to be posted on the slide deck and on our website as well, and on Twitter as well. If you have any questions or want to reach out to us, please don't forget to go ahead and email us at info@knowingtechnologies.com, and we'll be here to support you as best we can. And I hope you come back for the other days, because there's specific tools that we want to be able to share with you as well. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Woo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Yes, thank you. That was great.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're so
Thank
welcome.
you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.